A suspected tampered document, royal assets worth a fortune, and one name surfacing where no one expected Camilla. Princess Anne has reportedly uncovered alarming irregularities in the late Queen Elizabeth II's will. Mismatched handwriting, inconsistent ink, and a wax seal that appears to have been broken and resealed. Even more concerning, these questionable clauses grant Camilla control over historic estates and heirlooms traditionally meant to pass down the direct line of succession. Anne immediately launched a discreet investigation, but the revelations did not stop there. Following the paper trail, she allegedly unearthed a scheme aimed at nudging Tom Parker B.S. and Laura Lopes Camilla's two children closer to official royal standing. Armed with her findings, Anne confronted King Charles. While the monarch was initially skeptical, the preliminary evidence reportedly triggered a dramatic shift in his demeanor. How deeply is Camilla truly tied to the anomalies in Elizabeth II's final wishes? And what will Charles do if the woman he spent decades defending is now threatening the royal legacy and the future of William's throne? Princess Anne, the Princess Royal and the only daughter of the late Queen Elizabeth II, had always been regarded as the embodiment of iron discipline and absolute devotion to the crown. Following the monumental turning point in September 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral Castle, Anne's position as a steadfast pillar supporting the throne became all the more pronounced within the House of Windsor. She served as the silent guardian of traditional succession rules, ever vigilant against any disruption that might jeopardize the reign of King Charles III or the future of Prince William. On the opposing side of the balance of power stood Camilla. From her marriage in 2005 to her ascent as queen after the solemn coronation in May 2023, Camilla had steadily consolidated a firm sphere of influence within the palace. The dynamic between Anne and Camilla over the decades had always been one of calculated truce. Anne respected the standing of her sister-in-law out of duty to her brother. Yet she had never fully let down her guard regarding the quiet ambitions circulating among the Queen's inner circle amidst the silence of the royal archives at Windsor Castle, and slowly turned the pages of personal estate files transferred after her mother's funeral. Her original intention was merely to verify trust deeds concerning the historic estates. However, as her fingers grazed a sealed wax leather case containing an archival copy of Queen Elizabeth II's private will, the sharp intuition of someone who had stood beside the late monarch for over half a century gave her pause. She carefully opened the portfolio upon the mahogany desk, her gaze immediately fixed on the rigorously drafted parchment. As she turned to the detailed clauses governing the disposal of real estate and treasured collections, a seed of doubt began to take root in her mind and detected something unnaturally stiff in the marginal annotations and several inserted lines. Although the hand attempted to mimic the late Queen's characteristically slender and decisive script, the pressure of the nib and the tonal gradient of the black ink diverged noticeably from the earlier pages. In official documents prepared concurrently in 2019, Royal Archival ink maintained absolute consistency, whereas this specific text bore faint indentation marks and an ink formulation that appeared subtly fresher. Suspicion urged Anne to inspect the royal wax seal on the appendix more closely. Under the focused beam of the desk lamp, she uncovered microscopic hairline fractures along the rim of the seal, the unmistakable mechanical traces of having been deftly pried open, smoothed under heat, and resealed with a secondary stamp. Such minute nuances could not escape the watchful eye of someone as meticulous and deeply versed in court protocol as Anne. What made her chest tighten, however, was the substance of these questionable alterations. Instead of upholding the time-honored principle of direct dynastic succession, transferring heirlooms to King Charles III and subsequently to Prince William, these additional clauses granted perpetual ownership and full discretionary power directly to Camilla. Historic retreat estates, alongside some of the late Queen's most priceless jewel collections, were suddenly at risk of being severed from the royal trust to become the private property of the Queen consort. A chill laced with indignation rippled down Anne's spine. She stood motionless in the vacant chamber, listening to the rapid cadence of her own heart. The maneuver was shockingly sophisticated and brazen, striking directly at the legacy of her late mother and upending the strictly safeguarded foundations of succession. Anne knew full well that if she rashly brought this to light without incontrovertible proof, the affair would easily be dismissed as petty domestic friction between herself and Camilla, especially given Charles's unwavering protective stance toward his wife. With consummate self-restraint, Anne drew a quiet breath, meticulously folded each page, and returned every item to its exact place as though it had never been disturbed. A cold resolve settled in her eyes. She resolved to keep her discovery entirely to herself, quietly embarking on an independent investigation to unmask the truth behind the tampered script before ever confronting the king. Following the earth-shattering discovery in the archives, Anne's mind was seized by razor-sharp focus and a lingering undercurrent of dread. She refused to let even a flicker of unease surface in her demeanor, carrying out her official engagements with her trademark stoic composure. Yet when night fell, Anne retreated into her private study at Gatcombe Park, where she set about conducting the most meticulous of comparisons. She unlocked the safe containing private handwritten letters, personal journals, and internal directives that the late Queen Elizabeth Fechin had personally penned across various eras of her life. Anne laid these reference documents side by side with high-resolution magnified prints of the questionable passages from the will. Every minuscule detail was placed under the cold lens of scrutiny. Anne's fingers traced lightly over the paper following each curve of the script. Her mother's handwriting had always possessed a natural discipline. Horizontal crossbars were consistently decisive, and the slant remained remarkably uniform, reflecting decades of unyielding steadfastness. In the passages, granting extraordinary privileges to Camilla, however, Anne noticed faint, almost imperceptible hesitations. While the contours replicated the letter forms with precision, they lacked the organic momentum of a confident wrist. Subtle tremors ran through several hook strokes, betraying a hand that had painstakingly copied a reference model stroke by stroke, rather than writing with instinctive fluidity. Fully aware of the limitations of the naked eye, Anne decided she required indisputable forensic proof. The gravity of the matter was too profound to be handled through official palace channels, which were invariably riddled with listening ears. She quietly reached out to an independent and highly respected question document examiner in London, an expert entirely removed from the web of royal politics. Ultra-high-resolution imagery, optical scans of the wax seal, and spectral analyses of the ink were transferred under conditions of absolute secrecy. The days spent awaiting the results subjected Anne to an agonizing test of endurance. Each time she crossed paths with Camilla during ceremonial duties, watching her composed demeanor and the royal insignia gleaming on her hand, a heavy weight of suspicion bore down upon Anne's chest. The technical dossier was finally delivered directly into Anne's hands in a sealed, classified envelope. Every forensic test corroborated her worst fears. The supplemental clauses were written in an iron gall ink formulated at least 3 years after the rest of the original document. Microscopic examination of thermal stress patterns also confirmed that the wax of the royal seal had been artificially softened to insert the additional appendix before being meticulously resealed. Holding the cold clinical findings in her hands, Anne sat motionless at her desk. What had begun as a harrowing suspicion had now hardened into an unvarnished and ruthless reality. This was no administrative oversight, nor was it a mere family quarrel between relatives. It was a deliberate, calculated intervention orchestrated to manipulate the crown's supreme heritage. Anne tightened her grip on the portfolio, acutely aware that she held a figurative explosive capable of shattering the stability of the monarchy, and that the impending confrontation would demand flawless precision without the slightest margin for error. The forensic report was an undeniable piece of evidence. Yet to Anne it remained merely the tip of a vast iceberg. Tampering with the late Queen's top-secret will could never have been the impulsive act of a lone individual. Behind it lay a supportive network and long-term designs. Driven by an unyielding resolve to uncover the whole truth, Anne dug deeper into the origin of property review documents issued from Camilla's private office during the transition of power. Leveraging her oversight authority over royal trusts, Anne quietly gathered internal memos, official itineraries, and draft revisions to patronage portfolios that had never been made public. Night after night, she carefully pieced together the scattered fragments of information. Amidst the dense stacks of legal dossiers, Anne detected an unsettling shift in staffing proposals and resource allocations, tracing directly back to the Queen's inner circle. These classified files revealed a meticulously engineered strategy reaching far beyond the seizure of historic estates or heirloom jewel collections. The true objective was the elevation of the standing and prominence of Camilla's 2 children from her previous marriage, Tom Parker B.S. and Laura Lopes. Within the draft, restructuring plans were subtle proposals to install both of them as royal patrons for national cultural institutions, positions traditionally reserved exclusively for working core members of the royal family bearing Windsor blood. The deeper Anne delved into the informal annexes, the more her astonishment gave way to a cold, simmering fury. She uncovered memos outlining the feasibility of establishing honorary representative roles and even hinting at the potential bestowal of life peerages upon Tom and Laura in the near future. This maneuver was artfully disguised under the pretext of expanding community outreach, but at its core lay an effort to forge a parallel branch of influence embedding the interests of an outside family directly into the machinery of the monarchy. Such calculated machinations had taken place precisely during the vulnerable interregnum of succession, when all institutional focus was consumed by securing the stability of Charles's new reign. Anne felt the cunning and peril embedded in every move, seizing the power to dictate assets to ensure independent financial leverage, while incrementally legitimizing the presence of her own children in state ceremonies and royal institutions. Sitting alone in the stillness of her study, Anne tightened her grip on the documents. The full picture had now crystallized with absolute clarity. This was no mere material greed, but an orchestrated scheme to dilute the order of succession, directly encroaching upon the legitimate standing of Prince William and the future generations of the House of Windsor. Armed with everything from the forensic will analysis to these freshly uncovered internal dossiers, Anne knew hesitation was no longer an option. She placed the entire file into a black leather briefcase, preparing for a fateful confrontation with the king. The interior of King Charles III's private study at Buckingham Palace was enveloped in a suffocating stillness. The meeting had been arranged by Anne for a late hour entirely outside the framework of the official court circular, ensuring that not a single aide or private secretary, particularly from Camilla's household, could catch wind of the audience beforehand. Anne entered the room with her customary resolute posture, carrying the black leather briefcase that held secrets capable of shaking the very foundations of the institution. Opposite her sat Charles behind a desk laden with state papers, his face etched with the weariness of a long day of governance. When Anne set the thick dossier upon the mahogany desk and began systematically presenting what she had uncovered, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Initially, the king's reaction was one of instinctive skepticism and defensiveness. Charles knitted his brow, his gaze laced with visible irritation and guarded distance. He knew full well that the relationship between his sister and Camilla had never been genuinely warm over the decades. Between the two women had always lingered a polite yet cool detachment. In his heart, Charles immediately assumed this was merely an overinterpretation, an old prejudice stemming from Anne's conservatism toward the woman he had loved deeply and steadfastly defended for half a century. He was inclined to dismiss it outright, chalking it up to an unnecessary family quarrel at a time when the throne required unity above all else. Yet Anne did not allow emotion to intrude upon the moment. With steely composure, she opened the folders one by one and laid them flat before her brother. First came the high-resolution spectral analysis scans of the disputed will. The clear-cut charts revealed the stark deviation in the chemical composition of the ink alongside the crude thermal tampering inflicted upon the royal wax seal. Each forced stroke magnified beneath the optical microscope exposed an awkward forgery designed to legitimize personal ownership over historic estates and heirloom jewelry collections. Charles stared intently at the findings, his eyes wavering violently. His deep familiarity as a sovereign with palace scribal procedures made it impossible to dismiss physical evidence so ruthlessly conclusive. Next, Anne laid out the internal draft memos recovered directly from Camilla's office. Page after page charted the calculated campaign to elevate the standing of Tom Parker B.S. and Laura Lopes, from maneuvering to secure the patronage of major cultural institutions to discreet proposals concerning the conferral of peerages. The systematic nature of the operation stood in plain sight, shattering any attempt in the king's mind to rationalize this away as a misunderstanding or the rogue initiative of a subordinate. Charles's expression turned from disbelief to an ashen, hollow shock. His fingers trembled faintly as he turned the pages stamped with confidential seals. A suffocating, sharp anguish constricted the monarch's chest. This was no longer a vague suspicion. It was an unvarnished, chilling reality exposing a power play orchestrated beneath his very roof, directly violating the sacred final wishes of his late mother and imperiling the legitimate rights of the direct line of succession tied to Prince William. The betrayal from the one person he had trusted implicitly struck Charles like a blade to the core. He sat motionless in his velvet-upholstered chair, his vacant gaze lost in the space before him, submerged in a tempest of conflicting emotions between profound personal devotion and the crushing weight of the crown. Seeing the deep turmoil in her brother's eyes, Anne took a discreet step back, offering no further words of pressure. Leaving the entire file on the desk, she knew the hour of judgment had arrived. Charles drew a slow, quiet breath, his hand gripping the edge of the mahogany desk as his eyes hardened into a cold resolve. He resolved to personally impound and scrutinize every document, ushering in the most agonizing decisions of his reign. The study door clicked shut behind Anne, leaving Charles alone in a silence that felt suffocating. Across the mahogany desk, the forensic reports and internal planning drafts lay sprawled like an irrefutable indictment. The desk lamp cast a harsh light over every figure, every spectral analysis chart, and every tampered line of script reflecting the bitter truth into the sovereign's sorrow-laden eyes. A sharp, crushing pain seized Charles's chest. For more than half a century, his love for Camilla had been his greatest emotional anchor, the bond that carried him through relentless media storms and deep-seated royal prejudices to elevate her to queen consort. He had truly believed their union was founded on absolute sincerity and mutual understanding. Yet each document before him tore that illusion to shreds. To be betrayed by the woman he had loved and shielded for a lifetime, and over the sacred legacy of his late mother, was a ruthless blow to both his dignity and his heart. His internal turmoil spiraled into a fierce battle between personal devotion and the solemn duty of a monarch. If he chose to turn a blind eye to shield Camilla, he would make himself an accomplice in defiling the final wishes of Queen Elizabeth II, sowing seeds of instability across the realm. Worse still, such indulgence would directly strip away the legitimate rights of his son, Prince William, and imperil the future of the House of Windsor. Charles rose, walking slowly toward the window, overlooking the deserted forecourt of Buckingham Palace. His solitary silhouette mirrored against the dim glass, the crown resting upon his head, was not merely an emblem of supreme authority, but a covenant of honor sealed with history and the nation. The duty to defend the institutional integrity and direct line of succession was an absolute boundary that no personal affection could ever be permitted to cross. The vulnerability and grief in Charles's eyes gradually hardened into an icy resolve. He returned to his desk, drew up the velvet-upholstered chair, and sat with the posture of an ultimate arbiter. With deliberate and precise motions, he took up his familiar fountain pen and began drafting decisive internal royal decrees by hand. One by one, Charles struck through every disputed supplementary clause within the property trust dosses. Backed by his signature and personal royal cipher, he restored full, uncompromised ownership of all historic estates and heirloom jewel collections to the Royal Collection Trust, ensuring they would pass down directly and intact to Prince William and future generations. Next, Charles opened the dossier concerning Camilla's private office. Without a trace of hesitation, he set pen to paper to nullify every memorandum, strategic plan, and proposal aimed at elevating the public profile or granting official royal patronages to Tom Parker B.S. and Laura Lopes. Any prospect of conferring peerages upon the Queen's two children was permanently rescinded and struck from all future court agendas. Every stroke of ink was a ruthless cut into a relationship he had cherished for decades. Yet it was also a resounding reassertion of the crown's sovereignty. As the final decree was stamped with the confidential seal, Charles laid down his pen. A colossal weight lifted from his chest, leaving his spirit utterly hollow and cold. He had made his ultimate choice, relinquishing the blind shelter of love to preserve the sacred order of the monarchy. Charles's secret decrees reverberated like silent yet devastating subterranean shockwaves through every corridor and committee of Buckingham Palace. There was no theatrical public purge, no sudden stripping of ceremonial titles, and no sensational press release to feed the ravenous appetite of the global media. Outwardly, the ancient institution appeared as serene and immutable as ever, yet beneath the gilded surface, the palace's internal hierarchy and operational reality were utterly transformed overnight. Camilla retained the formal title and dignity of queen consort, continuing to fulfill her constitutional role beside the sovereign at major state banquets, diplomatic receptions, and parliamentary ceremonies. To the flashing cameras and the expectant crowds lined up along the mall, she presented an immaculate picture of regal poise draped in bespoke designer gowns, with historic diamonds and magnificent tiaras gleaming beneath the grand chandeliers. She offered her practiced, measured smile at every cue, executing each rigid step of court etiquette with flawless precision. Yet behind the heavy soundproof oak doors of the royal residences, every single vestige of her practical authority and institutional leverage had been methodically, mercilessly dismantled. Her private secretariat within the palace complex was dramatically restructured and downsized, its core administrative functions placed under the direct, unyielding financial surveillance of the Privy Council and senior household auditors. Every ounce of authority she had sought to cultivate over royal trust funds, the administration of historic landed estates, and the stewardship of premier national cultural charities was permanently revoked. Furthermore, the carefully orchestrated campaign to elevate her two children, Tom Parker B.S. and Laura Lopes, came to an abrupt and irrevocable halt. Their names were quietly erased from state event guest lists and future ceremonial rosters, relegating them strictly to the status of private family guests during rare, informal holiday gatherings. The grand design of engineering a parallel dynasty and weaving her own bloodline into the British peerage collapsed into complete ruin. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere between Charles and Camilla devolved into a suffocating, impenetrable chill. The easy camaraderie of their private afternoon teas, the shared laughter over domestic eccentricities, and the candid late-night discussions on state affairs and dynastic governance that had bound them together for more than 50 years vanished entirely. To spare the monarchy the catastrophic fallout of another public royal separation, they entered into a strictly enforced, discreet internal arrangement within the vast palaces. They took up residence in separate self-contained wings at Windsor Castle and Clarence House, served by different domestic staff, and keeping distinct daily routines, crossing paths only when sovereign duty and public ceremonies demanded the visible presence of king and queen together. Even during those mandatory public appearances, the profound fracture in their bond was palpable to anyone who looked closely. Charles kept his gaze firmly forward, his jaw tight and demeanor coldly professional, devoid of the gentle glances, whispered reassurances, and protective warmth that had once characterized his devotion to her. In stark contrast, the position and authority of Prince William expanded rapidly, cementing his status as the undisputed co-architect of the modern reign. With an absolute clarity of purpose born of his father's painful reckoning, Charles transferred vast managerial oversight of the royal estates, the stewardship of priceless royal collection treasures, and decisive influence over long-term institutional strategy directly into the hands of the Prince of Wales. William stepped decisively into the center of sovereign affairs, actively shaping a streamlined modern court defined by strict financial accountability, institutional transparency, and an unshakable commitment to honoring the foundational legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. Throughout it all, Princess Anne remained the steadfast, unsung guardian of the House of Windsor, carrying out her demanding roster of royal engagements with relentless dedication. During grand ceremonial gatherings in St. George's Chapel and the palace throne rooms, her cool, observant gaze would occasionally settle on Camilla, who stood resplendent in velvet and diamonds, bearing the immense physical and psychological weight of an ornate yet hollow crown. The sanctity of the throne had been successfully defended, and the traditional lineage of succession restored to unassailable footing. But the victory came at the devastating price of an enduring love story turned to ash. To the nation and the world, Camilla remained the queen. But within the inner sanctum of the monarchy, she was now merely a ghost, an isolated spectator cast forever beyond the perimeter of real power. Having read the story, do you think King Charles III's decision to protect the crown's legacy and direct line of succession over shielding the woman he loved for decades was the necessary ruthlessness of a monarch or a profoundly bitter personal tragedy? In a sea of videos, I am so glad YouTube managed to bring this one to you. We pour a tremendous amount of care into researching every single detail of these royal histories. I know using a TV remote takes a little extra time, but your likes and subscriptions are the ultimate motivation for our team to keep creating careful, high-quality stories for your screen. Thank you so much for your support.